The splash echoed through the quiet neighborhood as Marcus dove into what Karen claimed was her pool. 20 years he'd been swimming here. 20 years of early morning laps in the community pool his HOA fees helped maintain. But Karen had other plans. "This is my private property now," she snarled, her manicured finger jabbing toward the no trespassing signs she'd illegally posted overnight. What she didn't know was that Marcus had just finished his shift as a property law attorney, and the real ownership documents were burning a hole in his briefcase. When the police arrived, expecting to arrest a trespasser, they discovered something that would shatter Karen's world forever and change everything about Willowbrook community's most exclusive amenity. The chlorinated water embraced Marcus, Chen like an old friend as he sliced through the pool's length, his powerful strokes cutting through the pre-dawn stillness. 6 a.m. sharp, the same time he'd been diving into the Willowbrook community pool for the past 20 years. The rhythmic splash of his freestyle stroke was the only sound disturbing the peaceful morning, until it wasn't. "Excuse me. Excuse me." Marcus completed his lap and surfaced near the shallow end, water streaming from his dark hair as he looked toward the source of the shrill voice. A woman stood at the pool's edge, her bleached blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, her face twisted in indignation. She wore a crisp white tennis outfit and held her phone like a weapon. "Are you talking to me?" Marcus asked, treading water effortlessly. "Yes, I'm talking to you." The woman's voice pitched higher with each word. "You're trespassing on my private property." Marcus blinked, certain he'd misheard. This is the community pool. I live at 1247 Maple Street. I've been swimming here every morning for—" "I don't care where you think you live," she interrupted, her perfectly manicured finger pointing accusingly. "I'm Karen Whitfield, the new owner of this pool facility, and you're not authorized to be here." The absurdity of the statement hit Marcus like a cold wave. He pulled himself out of the pool in one fluid motion, water cascading from his athletic frame. At 43, his swimmer's build still turned heads, but right now he felt every year of exhaustion from pulling another all-nighter at the law firm. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, reaching for his towel, "there seems to be some confusion. This is community property, maintained by our HOA. I pay my fees just like everyone else." Karen's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Not anymore, sweetie. I bought this property fair and square. The previous owners were drowning in debt, pun intended, and I swooped in with a cash offer they couldn't refuse." Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of delusion or jest. He found neither. Karen Whitfield believed every word she was saying, and that made the situation infinitely more dangerous. The HOA doesn't have the authority to sell community amenities without a majority vote from residents, Marcus said carefully. And even if they did, such a sale would require proper notification to all homeowners. "Well, aren't you just a little lawyer?" Karen sneered. "I have the paperwork to prove ownership. Do you have paperwork proving you belong here?" As a matter of fact, he did. Marcus's briefcase sat on the lounge chair where he'd left it, containing not just his HOA documentation, but something far more interesting, the property research he'd completed yesterday for Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow 3 streets over, who'd been asking questions about some suspicious real estate activity in their neighborhood. "I can show you my HOA agreement," Marcus offered, moving toward his briefcase. "Don't you dare touch that." Karen shrieked. "You could have a weapon in there. This is exactly the kind of behavior I expected from someone like you." The phrase hung in the air like toxic gas. Someone like you. Marcus had heard those words before, delivered with the same particular venom, the same coded message wrapped in plausible deniability. "Someone like me?" Marcus asked quietly. Karen's face flushed, but she doubled down. "Someone who doesn't belong in a neighborhood like this. Someone who thinks they can just take what isn't theirs." The irony wasn't lost on him. Marcus owned his home outright, a 4-bedroom colonial he'd purchased with his signing bonus from Patterson and Associates 15 years ago. His property taxes alone probably exceeded Karen's annual income, but she'd already decided who belonged and who didn't based on nothing more than the color of his skin. "Mrs. Whitfield," Marcus said, his voice taking on the measured tone he used. "In court, I'm going to need to see your documentation proving ownership of this facility." "I don't have to show you anything." Karen pulled out her phone with theatrical flair. "I'm calling the police to have you arrested for trespassing." Marcus almost smiled. In his experience, people who were actually in the right didn't immediately jump to calling the police. They presented their evidence. Karen's refusal to show documentation was tell number 1. Her aggressive posturing was tell number 2. But tell number 3 was the most interesting. She'd position herself between him and the pool's entrance, as if she could physically prevent him from leaving to avoid questioning. Marcus said, "You're certainly welcome to call the police. In fact, I encourage it. They can sort this out properly." Karen's thumb was already flying across her phone screen. "Yes, police? I need officers at the Willowbrook Community Pool immediately. There's an African-American male, about 6 feet tall, trespassing on my private property. He's being aggressive and refusing to leave." Marcus raised an eyebrow. He'd done nothing aggressive. In fact, he'd been remarkably patient considering the circumstances. But Karen was building her narrative for the responding officers, painting herself as the victim before they even arrived. "They'll be here in 5 minutes," Karen announced smugly, ending the call. "I hope you enjoyed your last swim in my pool." "Your pool," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Mrs. Whitfield, when exactly did you purchase this property?" 2 weeks ago. "Not that it's any of your business." 2 weeks. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. 2 weeks ago, the HOA board had held an emergency meeting that most residents missed due to inadequate notice. 2 weeks ago, Mrs. Patterson had received a notice about pending changes to community amenities. 2 weeks ago, someone had started. The paperwork Marcus now carried in his briefcase, paperwork that would expose the largest fraud scheme Willowbrook had ever seen. "And you paid cash." Marcus pressed. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Why are you asking so many questions? The police will be here soon, and then you'll be their problem." "I'm asking because I'm curious about the chain of title. You see, Mrs. Whitfield, I happen to be a property attorney, and something about your story doesn't add up." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Karen's features. "You're lying. You don't look like a lawyer." There it was again, the assumption, the prejudice, the absolute certainty that his appearance told her everything she needed to know about his capabilities and social status. "Mrs. Patterson hired me last week to investigate some irregularities in recent property transfers," Marcus continued conversationally. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered that someone had been forging HOA board signatures and selling community property without proper authorization." Karen's face went pale beneath her foundation. That's impossible. I have legitimate paperwork." "Paperwork can be forged," Marcus said gently. "The question is whether you were part of the fraud, or just an innocent victim who got taken for a ride." "I'm not a victim of anything." Karen snapped, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "I own this pool, and I want you off my property right now." The sound of sirens cut through the morning air. Karen straightened, her confidence returning. "Now, you'll see," she said with satisfaction. "The police will remove you, and if you ever come back, I'll have you arrested." 2 patrol cars pulled into the parking area, their blue and red lights painting the pool deck in alternating colors. 4 officers emerged, hands resting casually on their duty belts as they approached. "Morning, folks," the lead officer said. He was a tall, gray-haired man with sergeant stripes and the measured demeanor of someone who'd handled countless domestic disputes. "I'm Sergeant Rodriguez. We got a call about a trespassing situation." Karen immediately launched into her prepared speech. "Officers, this man broke into my private pool facility and refuses to leave. I've asked him multiple times to get off my property, but is being belligerent and asking inappropriate questions." Sergeant Rodriguez looked between Karen and Marcus, taking in the scene: the well-maintained community pool, the woman in tennis whites, the man in swim trunks holding a towel. "Sir," the sergeant addressed Marcus, "what's your side of this?" "I live at 1247 Maple Street," Marcus replied calmly. "I've been swimming in this community pool every morning for 20 years. Mrs. Whitfield claims to have purchased the facility, but this is HOA common property that can't be sold without proper procedure. Do you have identification?" Marcus gestured toward his briefcase. "My wallet's in there, along with my HOA documentation." Sergeant Rodriguez turned to Karen. "Do you have documentation proving ownership?" Karen hesitated. It's It's at home. But I have every right to be here. This is my property. Actually, Marcus said, opening his briefcase under the watchful eye of the officers, I have something that might interest you. He pulled out a thick manila folder, the O. The pool deck fell silent except for the gentle lapping of water against the filtration system. Karen Whitfield stood frozen, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as the weight of her confession settled over the assembled group like morning. Fog, Sergeant Rodriguez exchanged glances with his fellow officers, years of experience telling him this case had just shifted from simple trespassing to something far more complex. He'd seen enough domestic situations to recognize the signs, the way Karen's shoulders had sagged, the genuine shock in her eyes, the way she kept looking at her phone as if willing it to ring. Mrs. Whitfield, Rodriguez said carefully, when did you last speak with your husband? 3 days ago, Karen whispered. He said he had to go to Phoenix for business. Real estate business. She looked up sharply. But he's not a criminal. Bobby would never. Officer Martinez interrupted gently. We are going to need you to sit down. Karen's legs seemed to give out as she sank onto one of the pool chairs, her tennis outfit suddenly looking less pristine, more costume-like. Marcus watched her with the clinical interest of someone who'd spent 2 decades reading people in courtrooms, but underneath the professional detachment, he felt an unexpected surge of sympathy. Mrs. Whitfield, Marcus said, pulling on his t-shirt. How long have you been married? 8 months. Her voice was hollow. We met at a country club mixer. He was so charming, so successful. He said he specialized in luxury real estate investments. Rodriguez was already on his radio, calling for a detective unit. Marcus could hear fragments of the conversation. Federal fraud case, potential flight risk, spouse on scene. Karen. Marcus said, using her first name deliberately to establish connection, I need you to think carefully. Did Bobby ever ask you to sign documents? Transfer money? Use your credit? He said the pool purchase needed to be in my name because of tax implications. Karen's words came out in a rush. I signed everything he put in front of me. I trusted him completely. How much of your money did he use? Karen's face crumpled. Everything. My divorce settlement, my mother's inheritance, the proceeds from selling my condo in Tampa. $140,000. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Bobby Whitfield hadn't just been running a real estate scam. He'd been running a marriage scam, targeting vulnerable women with assets and using them as both funding sources and unwitting accomplices. Mrs. Whitfield, Rodriguez said, ending his radio call, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Did your husband ever bring other people to your home? Meetings with potential buyers or investors? Yes, Karen nodded eagerly, seeming to grasp at anything that might prove Bobby's legitimacy. Just last week, he had a meeting with a couple who wanted to buy the tennis courts. And before that, there was a man interested in the playground equipment. The tennis courts. The playground. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle shifting into place. Bobby Whitfield wasn't just selling the pool, he was systematically selling off every piece of Willowbrook's common property to different marks, probably telling each one they were getting an exclusive deal. Karen, Marcus said urgently, do you remember the names of those people? The couple was Thompson, I think. They seemed so nice. They brought their little girl to see the tennis courts. And the man who wanted the playground was named Davis. He said he was buying it for his grandchildren. Marcus was already calculating in his head. Tennis courts in decent condition would run $30,000 to $40,000. Playground equipment, if it included the elaborate wooden castle structure, could easily be $25,000. Bobby had been running multiple cons simultaneously, each victim believing they were the only one. Sergeant, Marcus said, we need to contact the other buyers immediately. If they're planning to take possession of their property, we could have multiple confrontations like this one. Already on it, Rodriguez replied. Detective Williams is en route, and we are coordinating with the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Karen looked between them with growing desperation. I don't understand. Bobby showed me the papers. Everything looked official. There were stamps and signatures and, Officer Martinez said gently, sophisticated fraud often looks completely legitimate. That's how it works. But I verified everything. Karen's voice pitched higher. I called the number on the HOA letterhead to confirm the sale was authorized. Marcus and Rodriguez exchanged glances. What number did you call? The one on the official HOA letterhead. A man answered and said he was the HOA president and that the sale had been properly approved. Karen, Marcus said slowly, our HOA president is a 70-year-old woman named Dorothy Chen. She's also my aunt. The color drained from Karen's face completely. But the man on the phone knew all about the community, about the facilities, about the financial situation. Your husband fed you the information you needed to hear, Marcus explained. He probably had an accomplice answer the phone, someone who'd been briefed on exactly what to say. A new car pulled into the parking area, an unmarked sedan that screamed. Law enforcement. Detective Williams emerged, a compact woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd spent years unraveling financial crimes. Sergeant Rodriguez, she called, approaching the group. I'm Detective Williams, Financial Crimes. I understand we have a situation involving the Whitfield case. Whitfield case. Karen looked up sharply. You already know about Bobby. Detective. Williams studied Karen with professional interest. Mrs. Whitfield, I presume? We've been tracking your husband's activities for 6 weeks. He's suspected in similar schemes in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. The words hit Karen like physical blows. Similar schemes. Multiple states. 6 weeks of investigation. Her 8-month marriage was dissolving before her eyes, revealing itself as nothing more than an elaborate con. I need to sit down, Karen whispered, though she was already sitting. Mrs. Whitfield, Detective Williams continued, I need you to understand that you're currently considered a person of interest in a federal fraud investigation. However, if you cooperate fully, we can work something out. Cooperate. Karen's voice was barely audible. We need access to your financial records, phone records, any documentation your husband provided, and most importantly, we need to know if you have any way to contact him. Karen fumbled with her phone, scrolling through her contacts with shaking fingers. I've been calling and texting since yesterday. All his numbers go straight to voicemail. Marcus watched the exchange with growing unease. Something about the timeline bothered him. Detective Williams, when did your investigation begin? We got our first complaint 6 weeks ago from a victim in Jacksonville. Woman named Patricia Hendricks paid $40,000 for a community clubhouse that didn't exist. But Bobby and I only got married 8 months ago, Karen said desperately. If you've been investigating for 6 weeks, why didn't you? She stopped. Mid-sentence as the implication hit her. Detective Williams' expression confirmed what Karen was beginning to understand. Mrs. Whitfield, the detective said carefully, your husband has been running these scams for at least 18 months. We have evidence of at least 12 victims across 4 states. 12 victims, Karen repeated numbly. That we know of. The pattern is always the same. He targets recent divorcees or widows with significant assets, courts them quickly, marries them for legitimacy and access to funds, then uses their identities to execute property fraud schemes. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Detective, are you saying Karen isn't his first wife? According to our investigation, she's his 4th wife in 2 years. The other 3 are currently pursuing charges for identity theft and financial fraud. Karen made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. 4th wife. Mrs. Linda Whitfield in North Carolina, divorced after he entered her retirement account. Mrs. Susan Whitfield in Georgia, marriage annulled after he forged her signature on property transfers. Mrs. Jennifer Whitfield in Florida, currently working with prosecutors to recover stolen assets. The morning sun had climbed higher, but the pool deck felt colder with each revelation. Karen sat surrounded by the debris of her shattered life, while around her, law enforcement officials discussed her husband, a man she was beginning to realize she'd never known at all. I want to help, Karen said suddenly, her voice stronger than it had been since the police arrived. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. I want that bastard caught. Detective Williams nodded approvingly. That's what we need to hear. First thing, we need you to keep trying to contact him. If he calls or texts, you don't let on that you know anything. Can you do that? I think so. Good. Second, we Need you to think about anywhere he might go. Secondary residences, family members, business associates, anything. Karen was quiet for a long moment, then looked up with something approaching hope. His storage unit. He said he kept important business documents in a storage facility in Clearwater. Unit 247. Detective Williams was already making notes. Address. I don't remember exactly, but it's on Gulf to Bay Boulevard. Near the mall. Excellent. What else? He has a boat. Nothing fancy, just a 24-foot cabin cruiser. He keeps it at a marina in Dunedin, but I don't know which one. Marcus had been listening to the exchange with growing admiration for Karen's. Part 3. The hunter becomes the HUNT. The second text message hung in the air like a threat made manifest. Detective Williams immediately signaled to the officers, who began scanning the surrounding area with heightened alertness. The peaceful morning at the community pool had transformed into something far more sinister. He's watching us, Officer Martina said, his hand instinctively moving to his service weapon. Has to be. There's no other way he could know about this conversation. Marcus felt his blood chill as he surveyed the wooded area beyond the pool. Fence, the apartment complex across the street, the dozen vantage points from which someone could observe their gathering. Karen clutched her phone like it might explode, her face a mask of terror and betrayal. How long has he been watching? She whispered. How long has he known that I? She couldn't finish the sentence. Detective Williams was already coordinating with dispatch, calling for additional units and requesting aerial surveillance. Mrs. Whitfield, I need you to think. Does your husband own any long-range equipment? Binoculars, telescopes, surveillance gear? He had a drone, Karen said numbly. Said it was for real estate photography. And yes, expensive binoculars. Military grade, he called them. Marcus scanned the sky, looking for any sign of mechanical intrusion. The morning was still relatively quiet, but the sense of being observed pressed against his consciousness like a physical weight. We need to move this conversation indoors, he said. My house is 3 blocks away. No, Detective Williams shook her head. If he's been watching, he knows where you live. We need a secure location. Sergeant Rodriguez was already thinking tactically. The community center has no windows facing this direction, and it's got a secure conference room. Mrs. Patterson has keys. She's on the board. Dorothy Chen is my aunt, Marcus reminded them. She lives 2 streets over and she's usually up by now. Perfect. Let's move. As the group prepared to relocate, Karen's phone buzzed with another message. This time, her scream pierced the morning air. The photo on her screen showed the interior of what appeared to be a storage unit, boxes, filing cabinets, and stacks of documents. But it wasn't the contents that made Karen scream. It was the woman. Tied to a chair in the center of the frame, her mouth taped shut, her eyes wide with terror above the duct tape. Oh God, Karen sobbed. That's Linda. Linda Morrison from my book club. She went missing 3 days ago. Detective Williams grabbed the phone, studying the image with professional intensity. Can you tell where this was taken? The storage unit, Karen said through her tears. It has to be the one in Clearwater he told me about. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized the full scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just financial fraud anymore. Bobby Whitfield had crossed into kidnapping, possibly worse. Detective, Marcus said urgently, if he took Linda 3 days ago, right around the time he told Karen he was leaving for Phoenix, he never left town, Williams finished. He's been here the whole time, watching, planning. Another text arrived, this one addressed to the group at large, enjoying the show. Linda here has been keeping me company while I figured out how to handle my Karen problem. Turns out she's got some interesting information about community property values. Small world, isn't it? The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Linda Morrison lived in Willowbrook. She would have known about the community pool, the tennis courts, the playground. She would have known the real property values. The actual HOA procedures, everything Bobby needed to make his scams more convincing. He's been using her as a source, Marcus said grimly. That's how he knew so much about our community specifics. Detective Williams was already coordinating with the Clearwater Police Department, requesting immediate units to check every storage facility on Gulf to Bay Boulevard. But even as she spoke, They all knew Bobby was too smart to make it that easy. Mrs. Whitfield, William said, I need you to respond to him. Keep him talking. Don't let on that we are mobilizing to find Linda. Karen's hand shook as she typed, Bobby, what are you doing? This isn't like you. The response came immediately. You mean this isn't like the man I pretended to be? You never really knew me, Karen. Just like Linda thought she knew me when I started showing up at her book club meetings 6 months ago. 6 months. Marcus felt the timeline crystallizing. Bobby Whitfield had been planning this operation for half a year, infiltrating their community, gathering intelligence, identifying targets and resources. How many others? Marcus asked quietly. How many people in our neighborhood has he approached? As if hearing his question, another text arrived. Tell your lawyer friend I've enjoyed our morning swim conversations. Amazing what people will tell you when they think you're just another neighbor out for a jog. Marcus's blood ran cold. Over the past few months, he'd encountered a friendly jogger several times during his morning swims, a charming man who'd struck up conversations about the neighborhood, asked about property values, commented on the community amenities. A man with dark hair and a runner's build who'd seemed genuinely interested in the area. I've talked to him, Marcus admitted. Multiple times. He's been surveilling me for months. The full scope of Bobby's operation was staggering. He hadn't just married Karen for her money, he'd embedded himself in their entire community, gathering intelligence, identifying marks, building the detailed knowledge he needed to make his fraudulent property sales believable. Karen typed another message. Bobby, please don't hurt Linda. Whatever you want, we can work it out. What I want is simple. I want my loving wife to meet me at our special place. Remember where we had our first date? Come alone, and Linda goes free. Bring your new friends, and she dies. Karen looked up desperately. Our first date was at the Belcher Park Pavilion. It's isolated, surrounded by trees. Perfect for an ambush. He's not planning to let either of you go, Detective Williams said bluntly. This is cleanup. He knows his operation is blown, and he's eliminating witnesses. Then, what do we do? Karen asked. Marcus was studying the messages, looking for patterns, clues, anything that might give them an advantage. Something about the phrasing bothered him, the casual reference to community property values, the specific mention of morning swim conversations. Detective, he said slowly, what if he's not just cleaning up witnesses? What if he's still running a con? What do you mean? Think about it. He's been watching us all morning. He knows we have evidence of his fraud scheme. He knows law enforcement is involved. Any rational criminal would run. Your point. Bobby Whitfield isn't rational. He's a narcissist who believes he's smarter than everyone else. What if this isn't just about eliminating witnesses? What if he thinks he can still salvage something from the situation? Detective Williams frowned. Like what? Like one final, massive score. Think about it. He's got Linda, who knows about all our community assets. He's got Karen, who has access to HOA records and resident information. And he's demonstrated he can manipulate law enforcement response. As if to confirm Marcus's theory, another message arrived. Karen, bring the HOA master keys. The ones in your kitchen drawer. And tell Detective Williams that her partner Detective Morrison sends his regards. The blood drained from Williams's face. How does he know my partner's name? Because he's been listening, Marcus realized. The whole time we've been talking, he's been listening somehow. They all began checking their phones, looking for unfamiliar apps, signs of hacking. But Karen found something else, a small device, tucked under her pool chair cushion, blinking with a tiny red light. Audio surveillance, Rodriguez confirmed grimly. He's heard everything. The scope of Bobby's preparation was becoming clear. He hadn't just been watching, he'd been orchestrating the entire morning's events, anticipating their responses, staying several steps ahead. Mrs. Whitfield, Detective Williams said urgently, what HOA master keys is he talking about? I don't know. I don't have any HOA keys. But Marcus knew. Karen, when you moved into the house with Bobby, did he ask you to keep anything safe? Any official documents or equipment? Karen's face went white. There's a lockbox in our kitchen drawer. Bobby said it contained backup keys for the community facilities. Said the HOA president asked him to keep them as a security measure. He's been planning this from the beginning, Marcus said with growing horror. The marriage, the community infiltration, even getting access to master keys. He's not trying to escape, he's trying to rob the entire neighborhood. Another text arrived, this one with a photo attachment. It showed Linda Morrison, still bound but now sitting in what appeared to be the Willowbrook Community Center. Behind her, clearly visible, were the community's emergency supply lockers, the ones that contained backup cash for maintenance emergencies, spare keys for all facilities, and according to neighborhood rumors, a substantial amount of emergency funds kept for major repairs. He's already in the community center, Marcus said. While we've been standing here talking, he's been robbing us blind. The final text was the shortest and most chilling. Thanks for the distraction. By the time you get here, Linda and I will be long gone, along with everything valuable in your precious little community. Karen, you were always the perfect mark, so trusting, so eager to please. Don't take it personally. It's just business. Detective Williams was already running T. Part 4. The perfect TRP. The community center's silence pressed against them like a living thing as Detective Williams positioned her team around the building's perimeter. Marcus crouched behind a patrol car, his swimmer's body coiled with tension, while Karen huddled nearby, her designer tennis outfit now rumpled and stained with tears. Thermal imaging shows 2 heat signatures inside, Officer Martinez reported through his radio. 1 stationary in the main conference room, 1 moving between the office areas. Linda and Bobby, Williams confirmed grimly. But why is he still here? He had a 20-minute head start. Marcus studied the building's layout, his attorney's mind working through possibilities. The community center was a single-story structure with multiple exits, built into a hillside that provided natural cover. If Bobby wanted to escape, he had plenty of options. The fact that he'd stayed meant one of 2 things. Either he was trapped, or this was exactly where he wanted to be. Detective, Marcus said quietly, what if he's not trying to escape? What if he's waiting for us? Before Williams could respond, the building's PA system crackled to life. Bobby Whitfield's voice echoed. Across the parking lot, amplified and distorted but unmistakably smug. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final act of our little drama. I hope you've enjoyed the performance so far. Karen flinched at the sound of her husband's voice. 8 months of marriage, and she was hearing his true personality for the first time, calculating, cruel, utterly without remorse. Bobby, she called out, standing despite Williams's gesture to stay down. Let Linda go. This is between us. Oh, but it's not just between us anymore, is it, darling? Bobby's laugh crackled through the speakers. We have quite an audience now. Police, federal agents, that persistent lawyer who's been such a thorn in my side. Everyone's here for the grand finale. Marcus felt ice in his veins. Grand finale implied an ending, and given Bobby's escalating pattern of violence, that ending wouldn't be pleasant for anyone. Mr. Whitfield, Detective Williams called out. This is Detective Williams, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. We need to talk. Detective Williams. So lovely to finally meet you properly. I've been following your career with great interest. Did you know your partner Detective Morrison has a daughter at Clearwater High? Lovely girl, Sarah. She walks home alone. Every day at 3:15. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Williams's face went white as she realized Bobby's reach extended far beyond their current situation. You son of a bitch, she whispered, then louder. What do you want, Whitfield? What I've always wanted, a clean exit and my fair share of the profits. I've worked very hard to set up this operation, and I deserve compensation for my efforts. Through the building's windows, they could see movement, shadows shifting, someone walking back and forth in what appeared to be an agitated state. Mrs. Whitfield, Bobby's voice continued, I need you to come inside. Alone. We have some unfinished business to discuss. Don't do it, Marcus said urgently. He's already demonstrated his willing to kill witnesses. But Karen was already moving, pulling away from Williams's restraining hand. If I don't go in there, he'll hurt Linda. And Detective Morrison's daughter. And who knows how many others. Mrs. Whitfield, that's exactly what he's counting on. Williams said, "Your compassion is what got you into this mess in the first place." "Maybe," Karen said, straightening her shoulders with surprising dignity. "But it's also what's going to get me out of it." She began walking toward the building's main entrance, ignoring the urgent whispers from the officers behind her. Marcus watched her go with growing admiration. The woman who'd accused him of trespassing a few hours ago was now walking into mortal danger to save others. "Karen." Bobby's voice was warmer now, almost affectionate. "I knew you'd make the right choice. You always were too soft-hearted for your own good." The main door closed behind her with a hollow sound that seemed to echo across the parking lot. Through the windows, they could see her moving deeper into the building, following Bobby's voice. "Now what?" Officer Martinez asked Detective Williams. "Was studying the building's blueprints on her tablet, looking for alternative entry points. We wait. And we listen. And we pray that Mrs. Whitfield can keep him talking long enough for us to get into position." Inside the building, they could hear Bobby's voice continuing his monologue, though the words were muffled by distance and walls. What came through clearly was the tone, conversational, almost casual, as if he were discussing the weather rather than orchestrating multiple felonies. Marcus moved closer to the building, using his knowledge of the community center's layout, to position himself near a window that looked into the main conference room. What he saw made his blood run cold. Linda Morrison sat bound to a chair in the center of the room, her eyes wide with terror above the duct tape covering her mouth. But she wasn't alone. 3 other people were bound to chairs around the room's perimeter, faces Marcus recognized from the neighborhood, people who'd apparently been snatched during Bobby's final preparations. Mrs. Patterson from down the street, the elderly woman who'd hired Marcus to investigate the property fraud. Tom Williams from the corner house, who served as neighborhood watch coordinator. And Sarah Chen, his own teenage niece, Dorothy's granddaughter, who must have been visiting during her summer break from college. Bobby Whitfield hadn't just taken one hostage, he'd assembled a collection of the most connected, most informed residents of Willowbrook. People who knew everyone, who had access to everything, who could provide him with whatever information he needed. "Detective," Marcus whispered urgently into his radio, "he's got 4 hostages, not 1. Including my niece." Williams's voice crackled back. "Can you identify them?" Marcus rattled off the names, his voice tight with controlled fear. His niece Sarah was barely 19, a sophomore at USF who'd been planning to spend her summer working at the community pool as a lifeguard. Now she was tied to a chair, watching her neighbor's husband reveal himself as a sociopathic criminal. Through the window, Marcus could see Karen entering the conference room. Bobby stood with his back to the window, but Marcus could see the gun in his hand, held casually at his side like a natural extension of his arm. "Karen, my darling wife," Bobby said, his voice now audible through the thin walls. "You look terrible. This morning hasn't been kind to you, has it?" "Bobby," Karen's voice was steady despite her circumstances, "let these people go. They have nothing to do with our situation. On the contrary, they have everything to do with it. Mrs. Patterson here has been asking inconvenient questions about property transfers. Tom has been nosing around community finances. And sweet little Sarah, well, she's my insurance policy." Marcus felt rage building in his chest as he watched Bobby gesture toward his niece with the gun. Sarah was trying to look brave, but he could see the terror in her eyes. "Bobby," Karen continued, "what do you want?" "Money. I'll give you whatever you need. What I want, my dear, is what I've always wanted: respect, recognition for my superior intelligence, and a clean exit that allows me to continue my work elsewhere." "Your work? You mean fraud and kidnapping?" Bobby's laugh was genuinely amused. "I prefer to think of it as wealth redistribution, taking from people who have too much and giving to someone who deserves it more, namely, me." Through his earpiece, Marcus could hear Detective Williams coordinating with SWAT units, planning entry points and tactical approaches. But with 4 hostages in the room and an increasingly unstable suspect, any direct assault would likely end in bloodshed. "Mr. Whitfield," Williams's voice came through the building's PA system, "we need to discuss terms. What do you want in exchange for the hostages?" "Terms?" Bobby sounded delighted. "I love negotiations. Here are my terms. I want safe passage to the marina, where my boat is waiting. I want a 2-hour head start before you alert the Coast Guard. And I want Karen to come with me." No deal, Williams responded immediately. Then let me sweeten the offer, Bobby said, and Marcus watched in horror as he pressed the gun against Sarah's temple. I'll release 3 of the 4 hostages right now. But Karen and 1 other come with me as insurance. Marcus felt his world narrowing to a single point of rage and terror. His niece, barely out of her teens, was being used as a bargaining chip by a man who'd already demonstrated his willingness to destroy lives for profit. Which hostage? Williams asked, clearly buying time. The lawyer's niece, Bobby said casually. Sweet Sarah here has been so helpful, providing information about her uncle's habits, his schedule, his morning swim routine. Did you know she's the one who told me about the community center's emergency cash reserves? Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his world. Sarah hadn't been randomly kidnapped. She'd been cultivated as a source, manipulated into providing information that Bobby had used to plan his entire operation. She didn't know, Karen said quickly. Sarah had no idea what you were doing. Of course not, Bobby agreed. She thought I was just a friendly neighbor interested in community involvement. Amazing what people will tell you when they trust you. Through the window, Marcus could see Sarah's face crumpling with understanding and guilt. She'd been an unwitting accomplice in her own kidnapping and the targeting of her uncle. Bobby, Karen said, her voice taking on a new tone, something Marcus couldn't quite identify. There's something I need.